I guess we can expect just another chapter in the Death Cab kind of story. I mean, every record is, meant to be, hopefully an honest reflection of kind of where we are creatively and otherwise during the period which we're making the record. And you know, I don't know. I feel it's a worthy seventh chapter. Well, I mean, the album title is comes from a lyric within the song "Codes and Keys," and I mean, the title is the lyric has more to do with, um, you know, kind of all like the kind of I'm trying to think out loud here. It's just kind of like the points of security that we have in our lives, whether it's the codes to kind of get into places or keys to open doors. And so, I kind of feel like we kind of protect ourselves behind this facade of, kind of codes of language and kind of secret kind of, communications we have with people that are close to us, and also the physical kind of codes we need to get into places and keys to open doors. So, I mean, to me, it's kind of, the album kind of has this kind of theme of home that kind of runs through it all. And I feel like that one of the barriers between, being on the outside and being inside home are these very literal kind of codes and keys, but also metaphorically speaking, they represent kind of, the boundaries we put up, between us and other people. Well, I think I don't think it necessarily influenced this record per se. Otherwise, I'm like 8 years too late on that. But I think that every record that we make is representative of kind of we as individuals have things that we're listening to pretty extensively that kind of dictate what the record is going to become, and somewhere between Chris being really into kind of a lot of vintage 70s and 60s analog synths and that whole world, and me kind of listening to a lot of 60s kind of baroque and psych rock kind of stuff, and Nick being into what's Nick's into, which I can't really I mean
Yeah, I mean we all have that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Jason being into what he's into. It's like we all kind of come together to make a record, and then the record becomes the sum of those parts. And if the record has a more if there are less guitars in this record, it's not necessarily a conscious choice as much as it's just a reflection of the fact that you know me writing the type of songs that I wrote for this record were best presented with this palette of sounds, that is as much a reflection of what we're all into in general, but also just the way it kind of happened, which is kind of a kind of lame way to answer it, but that's really the answer. There's
Yeah.
no there's
We
no
didn't sit down and say
yeah.
we're definitely not going to use guitars on this album. It wasn't planned that way. I mean, just sort of that's just and especially I mean when Ben turns in at the beginning of a recording process. I mean we had somewhere in between 20 and 30 demos that you submitted to us, and of that group of songs, some things start speaking to us early on, and we kind of comb through them together and pick our favorites from that group and sort of, you know, I don't know, separate out some things thematically and whatever. And for whatever reason, these songs that we separated out of that just had that thing about them. And it wasn't a conscious plan by any stretch.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that for the first time we kind of had a set of songs that we felt would a string section would lend itself well to, and we didn't kind of set out to kind of do a death cab with strings kind of thing where we just pasted them on top of the recording. I mean, thankfully, with the help of Mina and the Magic Orchestra, she wrote some really amazing arrangements that worked well, and I think really served the benefit of the songs. And as far as with the synths go, it just was something that we came into the studio, and with every record we start, I come into the studio and meet up with these guys, and and I get a sense pretty quickly as far as with Chris producing kind of the things that he's kind of been really influenced by in the time since I've last seen him. And so when he started like breaking out all these like old keyboards and putting them on the desk and playing around with them, I kind of realized pretty quickly like, oh, this is what this record's going to be like. We're going to have a lot of this. And and I'm always kind of, and I just kind of go along with it. And if I hear something that I don't really like, of course we always speak up. But I'm always kind of interested to see how Chris as the producer is, and as much as Jason and Nick as well are going to interpret the songs that I write. I mean, I think there's certainly some of that. But I think it's a much more emotionally balanced record than Narrow Stairs was, for sure. Um, and I think that the presence of any light within an album, I'm sure might kind of shock some longtime fans. But I think that I think it's well balanced with some songs that are a little bit more kind of they're more brooding. So, but I would also hope that people don't listen to our records only because they want to wallow in misery.
Yeah,
I'd like to think that people find other,
Yeah.
that people are open to kind of exploring, other kind of emotions rather than just sorrow. Well, Chris Waller produced the record, so I guess in that sense it's self-produced. But we didn't. The
Yeah.
band didn't produce it.
Yeah.
And we recorded it in Los Angeles and Vancouver and Seattle and San Francisco, pretty much all the way up the West Coast. And we just would spend 2 weeks in one studio, record there, move up and then take 2 weeks off and then reconvene elsewhere and do a couple weeks there, and just mixing up going to different studios and kind of changing the environment was kind of beneficial to kind of just get us out of our comfort zone and kind of avoid stagnating if we would have stayed in the same studio for a month and a half, 2 months.
And Chris has produced all 7 of our full-length albums, and I mean, just about everything we've ever done in the studios.
Yeah.
Chris behind the console. And so, we have a really great sort of workflow communication. I think over the years, he's just gotten better and better at being able to, put on the producer hat and be the producer, and then put on the bandmate hat and be in the band, and go back and forth. And he navigates those waters, I think. I think he does it pretty well.
Yeah.
And so it's not, you would think that maybe that seems like a lot to be able to have a band member be the producer at the same time, but it hasn't ever really been an issue for us. It's never really worked against us, I don't think, in any significant way. So it feels pretty familiar that way, I guess, for this record.